So last week we were focusing on escaping negative bottom positions. Specifically, we looked at the side mount, the side mount, the knee on belly, and then a little bit of the hook control with the knee ride. What we're going to do today is we're going to flip the script and we're going to work on utilizing those top positions to maintain the top. So the first thing that I want you guys to remember is that you shouldn't only have to rely on your weight and size advantage to hold people down. If that's the only way that you can hold people down, then you don't have good top control, you have good pressure. And those are two separate things. You can't always assume that you're going to be bigger than your opponent, and you can't always assume that the opponent's always going to succumb to your weight. So if you only are using your weight advantage to hold people down, you're doing yourself a disservice. You need to learn how to utilize top control mechanisms to stay on top. So what do I mean by all this? We're going to work on the side mount and the side mount tonight and understand how to use those positions to hold people down. We'll talk a little bit about using pressure, but it's going to be more so understanding how to use the positions themselves to stay on top of our opponent. All right, so let's look at the context first of side mount. So what we were doing, guys, is we were working on drilling a guard pass and getting to side mount. Now, that was cooperative, right? We can never assume that as soon as I pass this person's guard, they're just going to allow me to cross face them, get the underhook, and then get my chest connected to them. We can never assume that. The reason we shouldn't assume that is because last week we worked on the escape, and our top priority when escaping the bottom side mount was blocking the crossface. So we want to assume that our opponent is skilled enough to know that if I've gotten my guard passed, I'm going to block that crossface. So this is what we're going to deal with today. I'm not just going to be like, okay, everybody, here's how you do a side mount. Because when you come to do rolling, you're never going to actually get into that position if you don't know how to first deal with the frame battle. So let's deal with the frame battle. What we're going to do is we're going to start off on our partner's side right here, and they're going to be blocking the crossface, which is exactly what they should do. Now, the first thing I want to do, guys, is I want to box in their opposite hip, okay? So I want to get my elbow as close to the ground on this side as possible. The reason for that is because they're going to look to do that frame and hip escape. He's going to bump his hips, accessing my elbow as a lever to hip escape out. So I want to keep my elbow heavy on the floor to use it as a frame to box his hips in. Remember, I've just passed this guy's guard. As soon as I pass the guard, I expect them to start trying to get away from me and put me back in guard. So he's blocking the crossface really well here. I'm not going to be able to just reach forward and grab his head. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect from the frames as I break his posture. Okay? Because Coach Seth's legs are just both flat on the floor, it's going to be very easy for me to drop my hips back and break his posture here, turning his knees away. This accomplishes two things. Number one, it disconnects me from the frames. His arms are only so long. He can't continue to reach and frame me. But also, number two, it creates a posture break. Because I've twisted his body in one direction, it's going to be difficult for him to escape. Now that I've disconnected from the frames here, this is going to allow me to change my angle of attack to get to his head. I'm going to look for an underhook with this arm. I'm going to cup the shoulder. Now I'm going to be pulling myself underneath his frames as I replace my elbow with my knee. Now I've beaten that frame. Okay, I only care about getting the crossface from right now. If this arm is still up in my face, it's all good. I'm then going to slide my arm underneath his head. From this position, I'm going to take my fingers, I'm going to put them inside of his armpit. So I take my fingers, I put them inside of his armpit. And now I'm going to pull him in as I get a really solid crossface. My knees are going to be tight up against his body. So I've successfully gotten to our crossface position. And from this point, I don't want him to continue to escape. Right? So I'm here, I'm still blocking and framing in his hip. I don't have to necessarily connect my hands together. I'm sure a lot of you can attest that when you go to connect your hands, they start hip escaping right away, and a wiry person puts you back in guard. So focus on keeping that box around their hips here, and using, we call it the Spider-Man grip, where I'm taking my two fingers here, and I'm taking the two fingers and putting them in the armpit, and I'm pulling. So what I want to do now is I want to keep this person pasted into the floor. Right? There comes a time where you need to learn how to move on top of somebody, but there also comes a time where you need to smear them onto the mat and not let them move. So if I want to do that, I'm going to again create another angle change. I'm going to bring my left hip to a 45-degree angle. So I'm driving all of my weight straight down into the crossface. I'm doing this with the intention of tapping them. I'm doing this with the intention of cross-facing them so hard that they are going to tap out. Now, a good person won't just tap out because of your crossface pressure, but someone who doesn't know what to do will. So I want you guys to know how to use a crossface to such a degree where they need to feel like they tap out in order to get you off of them, okay? So again, to do that, I'm gonna be dropping my hips down towards him, my left hip, as I walk my legs to a 45-degree angle, okay? My right hand can then transition to the other side of his body so his guard can't follow me. If I'm just moving my body, his guard's gonna be following me and sliding in. So instead, what I do is as I get this crossface and I'm walking, I can put my hand on this side, right? A lot of times when I do this crossface, it's gonna force them to turn away from me, right? I get such a nasty crossface, they turn away, that can expose the back. If I wanna be that person and I just want them to suffer a little bit, I won't let them turn away from me. I'll get the crossface and then I'll grab a hold of that arm so I can stop them from rotating. If we go back over here, I'll actually grab their arm here and I'll just sit in this position and I don't give them the chance to rotate away from me, okay? So we don't normally talk a whole lot about pressure and we'll do so later on because again, I don't want the only way that you're able to hold the top position being pressure. If that's all you can do, then it's gonna be a disservice in the long run. So I want you guys to understand this. Consolidate the guard pass by controlling their hips first. Defeat the frames to get to the crossface, and then paste them into the floor with the crossface. Okay? That's gonna be kind of your order of operations for the side mount right now. So, it seems like a lot, guys, but all we're doing is we're just getting to the side mount. Okay? But it's all these little battles that really add up, these little micro battles. This is what's gonna make it just a side mount compared to a really solid side mount. So again, let's start off here. I'm on the side, I've just passed his guard. He's blocking the crossface. I'm making sure I'm keeping a heavy frame on his opposite hip. I'm gonna disconnect away from his arms as I fold his legs, breaking his posture. Because I've disconnected, I can get my underhook, start pulling myself up. I replace my elbow with my knee. I need to let go of his arm at this point, guys, so I can come underneath and get my crossface. I get my Spider-Man grip in his armpit right here. From this position, I'm gonna start walking towards his head to a 45-degree angle. Don't go too far, just 45 is fine. So I'm gonna walk to a 45-degree angle. I can block his hip. If he turns away from me, I let him turn and I can start to attack his back or the arm bar if it presents itself. Alternatively, if I don't want him to turn, then I'll actually collect this arm and just hold it here. Again, cross-face them with the intention of making them tap. Now, don't be mean to your partner, right? Don't just sit there and be like, come on, tap out. Just use a good crossface against someone who doesn't know how to receive pressure. It may work, okay? So I'll show it again from the rear so you can see more of the footwork. Okay, so I'm in this position. I feel that he's framing, right? Again, guys, let's look at the context. I've just passed his guard. I'm consolidating the guard pass, boxing his hips. Fold his legs away from me, get my underhook, pull myself up, replace for the crossface. I'm gonna get that Spider-Man grip, heavy pressure. If he turns away from me, I let him go, there's the back. If I don't want him to turn away, I'll collect his arm and make him suffer a little bit. And that's jiu-jitsu. Cool, any questions? Okay, so again, it seems like a lot, but just 3 phases. Number 1, consolidate the guard pass. Number 2, frame battle. Number 3, crossface and pressure. Cool? So just 1 for 1. 1, 2. All right. Any questions so far on that side mount? Cool. So in my opinion, like when it comes to learning how to control positions, we could either do it the easy way or the hard way. You know what I mean? Like the easy way is to just be like, okay, everybody, this is what a side mount looks like. Okay, now go practice that. But again, when it comes time to roll, is that just gonna happen? Is your partner just gonna let you get all of those things on them? Of course not, okay? Everything goes back to our alignment principle, base, posture, and structure. I'm trying to break down those concepts on him while I'm trying to retain those things on me. So if we examine what we were doing here with the side mount in this particular position, we created a posture break to get his hips turned away from us. We created a structure break, pulling his arms away from his body. We create another posture break by turning his face. Whereas from the top position, I still have my base, I still have my posture, I still have my structure. So this is going to make it more efficient for me to be offensive, and it's going to force him to be defensive. That's the whole point of the alignment system, is trying to understand how we can break down those things on our opponent. Let's now look at the side mount and understand how we can use that position to hold them down. The side mount, if you're unfamiliar, is a position where if I can't get to the crossface, I'm just gonna focus on controlling the hips and not letting them hip escape. So generally, we're here, they're blocking the crossface to such a degree that we're simply gonna switch our hips, keep a good box on this side, and focus on keeping their hips controlled on both sides. I can't get to the crossface, but I don't really care about that because all I care about is not letting him do the frame and hip escape. Now the problem with the side mount is that you can't really submit anybody from here, right? There's not very many submissions I'm gonna do like this. To submit, I'm gonna need to start separating his arms, you know, bringing his arms away from his body, breaking his posture and stuff. But this is a super good position to control someone. We always mention how this is not the scarf hold. These are two different positions. The scarf hold is where I'm high up on his body, okay? Our scarf hold is where we're focusing on sort of smothering them, keeping their limbs apart. The side mount, I'm back on their hips. So how are we gonna utilize this position? First of all, when would we go here? If I'm here in the side mount and I'm trying to get up to their head and I just can't for the life of me get there, or I've just passed their guard and this person's going crazy trying to hip escape, we're gonna switch our legs and we're gonna drop our right hip down on the floor, okay? The right hip depending on the side that you're on. So I'm scissoring my legs here. So when I do this leg scissor motion, I'm not doing it with the intention of trying to get like a super wide split. I'm simply doing it so that I can generate base on both of my feet, one foot driving into him, the other foot preventing me from getting thrown over, okay? So right now I'm keeping my hips on the ground, but in reality I'd want my hips off the floor and I'd want him to carry my weight. My right elbow is still boxing in his opposite hip here. From this position, I'm just gonna kind of ride how my partner moves, okay? Let's say he tries to bridge into me. If he bridges into me, I'm gonna simply pull up on this arm as I sag my hips to the floor. So what I'm doing is I'm creating lever control and I drop my hips so that I'm closing the potential space that he can use to shove his knee in, right? Look at this again. If Coach Seth bridges, my butt's off the floor. If I keep my butt off the floor, here comes his knee. So to stop that, when he bridges, I sit my butt on the floor, okay? And now, to prevent him from hip escaping out on this side, I pull this arm up. If I don't pull this arm up, again, he accesses this arm as a lever, out he goes. So what we're gonna do is, when he bridges into us, we drop the hip and we pull up on the opposite side as we drive our hips back down, and now we're back in side mount. The escape that we did from this position last week saw us framing on this arm, using that bridge and the pendulum kick to start to sit them back. When we feel a really strong frame here, we're simply gonna change the orientation of our body and sort of spike our shoulder down into them like we're finishing a double leg. So if he's got a really good frame here, and as he goes to start to bridge, I'm simply gonna my body down towards his legs. And then I'm walking, and look, that puts me right back in this position. I've disconnected from the frame battle, and I can start walking under and going up for the side mount, which is where I wanted to be the whole time, okay? Again, I'm not gonna submit anybody from this position here. You know, if you understand how to have really good like PSI of understanding how to put your body weight into a small little area, theoretically you could tap somebody out with like really good pressure from the top position, but it's really difficult. You gotta find the sweet spot. But again, my hips are off the floor because I have the intention of making him tap out from my weight. Once we're here, you're gonna do two different things. Number one, the bottom person is just gonna try to bridge into you. Drop and pull that arm up and push them back down. The second one is the more dangerous situation. They're gonna bridge and start pushing your arm backwards. As soon as we do this, we're gonna start rotating our body, and let's be very clear here, guys. When I'm rotating my body, I'm accessing his wrists as levers, and I'm dropping my weight down on top of his wrists. Be very careful with this because if he's framing here and he's creating that bend in his wrist, as my weight drops down on top, you can easily wrist lock this person. But again, as he bridges, I'm gonna rotate my body, taking that left shoulder and spearing it right down into his gut. My arms are rotating back towards his legs. Here. I can collect my hands together, and now look. I start turning his hips away from me, and here's where we were at the beginning when we practiced our side mount. I've disconnected. I've created a posture break on his legs. He's trying to frame. Because I've disconnected, he has to reach for me. And now, I can start working my way up into the side mount. Anytime we're working on a side mount position, the person on the bottom has the tendency to reach out and put their frames on our hips. This is a super common beginner mistake. So like, let's say if I'm passing his guard and I'm here, he might try to frame on our hips like this. Anytime somebody does this, we can be nice or we can be mean. If I want to be mean, I'm just going to put their elbow on the mat and suddenly drop my hips and break his wrist. We never put our hand on our opponent's hip when they're passing our guard. Because number one, they're not going to pass our guard hips first and try to hold us down with their hips. They're going to use shoulders, knees, the head, okay? We block the leading edge. But if I'm on top position here and my partner's framing on my hip, I'll just be a little nice about it. I'll just kind of rotate and teach him not to do that, all right? And just give him a little wrist lock there so that he knows not to hold my hip like that. Again, be gentle with that one. You don't have to like crash down super suddenly and break their wrist just because they're framing your hip. So again, a lot of stuff, but I want you guys to understand what to do when you're in this position instead of just, well, here I am, now what? So again, how do we get there? Either I'm in the side mount and he's framing and he's starting to push me away and I drop to the side mount, or I've just passed his guard and I get to the side mount right here. As soon as I'm in this position, I've scissored my legs, my butt's off the floor, I'm caging in his hip. He's framing, he gives a little bridge, I drop the hips and pull up on this arm. Second option, he bridges a little harder, I'm gonna rotate my body, looking to put my left shoulder in his gut, connecting my hands together. Once I'm in this position, you drop your mic for like the 50th time, and then once you're in this position here, guys, you can just start working back up and getting to your same side mount we worked on from here. Getting underneath that frame, coming up on top. Okay, guys? If you're unfamiliar, the reason I said it's like a double leg is because when we finish double legs, come on up, coach. We're spiking with the shoulder and we're driving. It's the same exact position in this, where if we do it from this perspective, he's bridging into me. I spike with the shoulder down towards his legs here. I'm holding, then I can start walking and turning his legs away. Okay, so if you didn't really get the analogy of what I was referring to there with the double leg, that's what I was referring to. So with this particular position, guys, start slow. Have the bottom person give a little bit of feedback, the bridge, hard bridge and frame, and then top person, understand how to react by dropping the hips. But always remember, we're trying to keep our weight on them. We want them to carry us, except for when their hips are off the ground. In that case, we drop so their knee can't come in. Does this make sense, guys? Okay, so let's try this out. 1, 2, here we go. Okay, guys. So any questions on this side mount? Remember, the position is the important part, right? Understanding what you're trying to do in that position. All these other little details and like little rotations and things like that, those are just common things that are gonna happen, right? Your partner is going to frame. They're going to try to push you away. So it's good to have some option that you can use to deal with it. We should be able to use the side mount and the side mount kind of like in conjunction, right? When one's not working, we can go to the other one. We can try to get back to the other. So for instance, if I'm here, let's say I'm in the side mount and it's just not working. He's like framing really, really good. I can drop back to the side mount. You know, I can start swimming through, getting back to the side mount again. You know, he bridges again. I drop back to the side mount again. You know, he's bridging into me a little harder. I rotate, hug those legs, start turning his knees away, get back up to the side mount. So it should be a little bit sort of like fluid with how you're using these positions. If you just get to a side mount and you're like, nope, I'm just never gonna move now, then again, you're doing it a service. At some point, they're going to escape. And when they do, now you're gonna learn, oh, I should have been adjusting and adapting and trying to move with them, okay? So again, our top priority when it comes to top control is trying to utilize frames and levers and movement to maintain a top position, as opposed to just trying to be as heavy as possible, okay? A 145-pound person can only hold down so big of people, you know what I mean? People my size, yeah, I can hold them down. Somebody 250, 300, yeah, right. So what do I need to use? I need to use frames. I need to use mechanical advantages. I need to use posture breaks. I need to use levers. I need to use movement in order to stay on top of people. That's harder to learn than pressure. You have plenty of time to learn how to be really heavy and how to pressure someone. If you become a purple belt and you've never learned how to stay on top through virtue of movement, frames, and levers, now you've wasted a whole lot of time that you could have been using to learn more efficient movements, right? If you get to the purple belt and your only go-to top control movement is, I'm really big and heavy and I can hold you really hard, that's awesome. But when you go against that person who that doesn't work against, then you don't have a sort of person in that battle anymore. You know what I mean? You don't really have any other options to fall back upon. Cool, guys? Anyone have any questions on this? So we did our side mount. We did the side mount. Let's use these now in our top control drill. If you need water and things like that, let's grab them. Ready, 1, 2.